Our top story this morning. South and North Korea are set to hold their groundbreaking ceremony in North Korea for linking and modernizing railways and roads between the two Koreas. This comes 8 months after the leaders of Seoul and Pyongyang first agreed to work together on the project. It wasn't exactly smooth sailing due to a lack of progress in the North Korea-US negotiations. But after many twists and turns, South and North Korea are indeed due to hold this groundbreaking ceremony before we bid farewell to 2018. We have our Unification Ministry correspondent Oh Jung-hee joining us live from Dorasan Station, which is the northernmost train station in South Korea. Jung-hee, good morning.
Good morning, Mark. I'm standing at Dorasan Station, just 700 meters away from the demilitarized zone. If trains really do get to travel back and forth between South and North Korea, then this will be the last station before you cross the border into the north. Earlier this morning, the South Koreans attending today's groundbreaking ceremony passed through this station and are expected to have arrived at the North's Panmun station an hour ago. That's exactly where today's groundbreaking ceremony will take place from 10 a.m. just about now. There are 100 participants each from South and North Korea. From North Korea, Lee Sun-kwon, the head of Pyongyang's reunification committee, is to be at the event with senior North Korean officials from the Economic Cooperation Committee and vice ministers of railway and land. From the South, Seoul's transport and unification ministers Kim Hyun-mi and Jo Myung-kyun are attending, along with the leaders of South Korea's political parties and rail and road-related officials. A few South Koreans who lived in the north before being displaced by war have been invited as well, along with the engineer who last ran trains across the border. Let's have a listen to what they had to say this morning.
I'm very excited and I think I'm very lucky. There are a lot of us who had to leave our hometown. It'd be great if all of us could go and visit our hometown by train. We're all old. It's our big wish to go there by train.
It's been 10 years since I last ran trains to the north via Gyeonggi rail line. Back then, I didn't have any special thoughts. But after it was all suspended and I retired, I've been thinking, when will I ever get to go there again? It's great that I get to visit there again.
Okay, well, Jung-hee, they must be extremely excited to be making this trip. We're hearing, though, that there are also participants at today's event who are not from the Korean Peninsula. Can you tell us about who they are? And also, does their presence mean that this massive transport project could actually begin right away?
Well, Mark, to answer your first question, yes, top railway and road officials from China, Russia, and Mongolia will be at the groundbreaking ceremony today. And that, as inter-Korean railways could eventually be linked to railways cutting across these three countries to join the Trans-Eurasian Rail Network in the future. Also, the executive secretary of the UN's Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific is coming. We're assuming her presence is because of a project called the Asian Highway Network, where UNESCOP and countries in Asia and Europe aim to connect highways that cross the continent and reach Europe. A couple of proposed routes pass through the two Koreas. But even if we have quite a number of high-level figures coming to the event, today's groundbreaking ceremony doesn't mean that the two Koreas will kickstart related construction right away. The two Koreas have received sanctions waivers from the UN Security Council for on-site surveys and today's ceremony, but that doesn't mean these waivers will apply to whatever work happens in the future. Seoul also plans to do more detailed surveys before coming up with construction plans. South Korea says the actual construction work won't begin yet, and things will go in accordance with progress on North Korea's denuclearization and following waivers on sanctions. Back to you, Mark.
Okay, thank you very much, Jung-hee, for that report. No guarantees then, but certainly a nice way to wrap up 2018 for the two Koreas. That was Oh Jung-hee, Unification Ministry correspondent, reporting on the groundbreaking ceremony on those road and rail projects that's happening right about now. Now, in other news, Pope Francis delivered his annual Christmas Day speech on Tuesday, praying for peace and renewed brotherhood in the world's conflict zones. His wishes also included peace and unification between the two Koreas. Lee Seung-jae with the details.
In his Urbi et Orbi blessing at the Vatican on Christmas Day, Pope Francis said his Christmas wish is for brotherhood among people with different ideas, and that they may open their minds to listening to one another. The Pope also extended his wish to peace and unity on the Korean Peninsula.
May Christmas consolidate the bonds of fraternity uniting the Korean Peninsula and help the path of rapprochement recently undertaken to continue and to reach agreed solutions capable of ensuring the development and well-being of all.
Addressing tens of thousands of tourists and Catholics alike, Pope Francis drew attention to the developments on the Korean Peninsula, saying the universal message of Christmas is that, quote, God is a good father, and that we are all brothers and sisters. Without fraternity, the Pope said, even the best plans and projects risk being soulless and empty. Pope Francis urged the international community to seek ways to resolve the world's conflicts, hoping peace will be achieved in Yemen, where the Yemeni people, especially children, are exhausted by war and famine. He also mentioned conflicts in Africa, Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Ukraine. Meanwhile, the Vatican has confirmed the Pope is unlikely to visit North Korea next year, despite North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's invitation, a message South Korean President Moon Jae-in relayed to the Pope during his visit to the Vatican in October. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, instead of a Santa rally, global stocks are witnessing one of their worst Christmas seasons on record. The US government shutdown and fears of a global economic slowdown have slammed Wall Street and even Asian markets that were open on Christmas Day. There were a couple of them. Kim Hyo-sun reports.
Stocks around the world are tumbling on fears about the government shutdown in Washington and the global economic slowdown. Asian markets that opened on Christmas Day also suffered, with Japan's Nikkei dipping below 20,000 for the first time in 15 months. It plunged at the open on Tuesday by more than 5%. The fall followed U.S. stocks, where all three of the major indexes fell by over 2% on Monday. This is the first time the Dow, S&P 500, and Nasdaq have dropped by over 1% on Christmas Eve in over 120 years. Experts say the government shutdown and President Trump's attacks on the Federal Reserve have eroded investor confidence. Market analysts also forecast a prolonged economic slowdown, which will affect investor sentiment going forward.
Investors are very fearful that the growth of the U.S. economy and the global economy are going to slow down a lot next year and the year after that, and that there could even be a recession either in the U.S. or for the entire world economy.
While most Asian markets were closed for Christmas Day, the downturn also affected China's benchmark Shanghai Composite Index, which opened lower and tumbled more than 2% in the morning. It's also left to be seen how the bearish market will affect South Korea, especially as its benchmark Kospi is only about 50 points above the psychologically important 2,000 line. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
US President Donald Trump has said he will not reopen the US government until he gets full funding for his border wall with Mexico. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Noah Aram. So Aram, President Trump is known for being quite a stubborn president, but in this case, we can honestly say that he's really digging his heels in.
That's right, Mark. There has still been no agreement between the White House and the Democrats to end the political impasse on Trump's wall. The government shutdown is now in its 4th day and is expected to continue into the new year. President Trump said the wall was needed to stop what he called bad people.
You know, there's a problem in this world today. It's called human trafficking. Human trafficking is one of the hard to believe problems, and we're not going to let that take place. We are working so hard to catch these traffickers. They're bad people. We can't do it without a barrier. We can't do it without a wall.
Trump also claimed that the wall was scheduled to be built through renovations and new contracts and that he was going to visit the site next month. These claims have not yet been confirmed by the White House. The president also suggested without evidence that federal workers were willing to stay on unpaid leave until he receives his wall funding. The death toll from a tsunami in Indonesia has jumped to nearly 430 now, with more than 150 people still missing. Officials fear the death toll could rise further. Rescue workers continue to scour the affected areas and search for possible survivors, but their efforts are being hampered by blocked roads. To counter that, heavy lifting equipment has been sent to help. The tsunami hit the Indonesia's coastline on Saturday and caught many people by surprise. It is thought to have been caused by undersea landslides triggered by volcanic activity from the mountain Anak Krakatau. Meanwhile, volcanic activity is causing concern elsewhere, this time in Italy, as Sicily's Mount Etna erupted on Christmas Eve. Volcanic ash covered surrounding villages and fiery lava could be seen spewing out and flowing down the mountain sides. It also shook the ground with more than 130 tremors, the most powerful of which registered a magnitude of 4.3. The eruption also caused the nearby Catania airport to close, but it was reopened on Christmas Day. Coming back to President Trump now, and he has kicked off an internet storm after he asked a 7-year-old boy if he still believed in Santa. Here he is talking to the boy named Coleman in a Christmas Eve phone call.
Well, that's very good. Well, you just have a good time. Are you still a believer in Santa? Because at 7 it's marginal, right?
Twitter lit up like the fireplace behind him, with messages criticising the president for casting doubts on a cherished childhood fantasy. Others praised Trump, saying his comments were warranted.
Now we're going to continue our look back at the twists and turns in Korean and international news over the past 12 months and what an eventful year it has been. South Korea-Japan ties took a dramatic turn towards the end of 2018 following Seoul's decisions on wartime compensation for Koreans forced to labor for Japanese companies during the war and the dissolution of a foundation for the female victims of Tokyo's wartime sexual slavery. Our Park Hee-jun takes a look at how bilateral ties have been shaken and where they stand as we head into 2019.
In the short span of 2 months, Seoul Supreme Court ruled that 2 Japanese companies must compensate South Korean victims for unpaid work during Japan's colonial rule of Korea. It said the 1965 treaty that normalized diplomatic ties with Japan did not abrogate the right of individuals to seek reparations. So the victims got their victory after a decades-long fight. And so did the women forced to sexually serve Japanese troops during World War II. On November 21st, the South Korean government announced that it will begin legal procedures to dissolve the Reconciliation and Healing Foundation, or the so-called Comfort Women Foundation. The decision was not unexpected because the foundation, funded by Japan, was controversial from the very start. Tokyo claims it's done enough over the years to completely settle the issue of the Comfort Women, but critics say its actions do not reflect the wishes of the victims, nor have they come with a sincere apology. President Moon Jae-in also made clear his opposition to the agreement that set up the foundation. Both issues sparked immediate protests from Japan. Japan has been demanding that the South Korean government overrule the court's decision on the forced labor payments. Prime Minister Abe also stepped in to condemn the shutdown of the Comfort Women Foundation, calling for Seoul to act responsibly. The two sides are working to build mutual understanding on the issues, as shown through the phone conversation between their foreign ministers and the meeting between officials in Seoul earlier this week. But it will take many more months for the foundation to be completely dissolved, the biggest question being what to do with the remaining $5 million in funding sent by Tokyo. When it comes to the women who were sexually enslaved, the South Korean government plans to turn to the victims themselves to find an appropriate way forward and to negotiate on those measures with Japan. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
Now let's move on to one of our top global news stories for 2018. This year has seen The range of wild weather in various parts of the world, from heat waves to hurricanes. Extreme weather has been making headlines around the globe. Once again this year, our Sobo Bin reports.
This summer was said to be the fourth hottest on record, raising alarms over the future of our planet. Experts have also warned that heat waves across the world could grow more frequent and intense in the years to come. From the US and Canada to Norway and Japan, the Northern Hemisphere has seen record-breaking temperatures and extreme heat waves in the summer month. In the US, excessive heat warnings were issued, and Denver and Los Angeles both hit their all-time highest temperature of 42 degrees Celsius. The extreme weather in California also led to deadly wildfires, including Camp Fire, which has been described as the state's most destructive and third deadliest wildfire in history after it left towns and homes in ruins. Asia also suffered from heat waves, and in some areas of Japan, the temperature hit 40 degrees Celsius in July. And after the heat waves, there were a series of powerful hurricanes and typhoons. In October, Hurricane Michael plowed through the southeastern United States after making landfall in Florida. Michael was the most powerful hurricane on record to ever make a landfall on the Florida Panhandle. In Japan, when Typhoon Jebi hit Osaka in early September, thousands of people were stranded and had to be evacuated from Kansai International Airport after a ship collided with the bridge connecting the airport to the mainland. Scientists say there could be even more extreme weather in the future, with the World Meteorological Organization predicting that the number of heatwave days could double by 2020 and quadruple by 2040. 서보빈, Arirang News.
Now, in the rest of the day's news, there have been 2 more BMW engine fires in South Korea, even after the private government joint investigation team confirmed the car's faulty exhaust gas recirculation system was to blame for the blazes in those certain models. On Tuesday, a BMW sedan burst into flames while on the road, and another BMW, a model not subject to a nationwide recall, caught fire on Monday. As a dozen BMW vehicles that were not subject to the recall have turned into raging infernos, South Korea's transport ministry stated it could demand the German auto giant order additional recalls. What should have been a relaxing Christmas golf trip to Thailand turned into tragedy on Tuesday as 2 elderly Koreans at a golf course drowned when their golf cart fell into the Nan River. The men's cart plunged into the river when a second golf cart carrying their wives crashed into them on the club pier. A caddy was also hit and fell into the river as well, but a nearby fisherman managed to pull her to safety. The fisherman says he was unable to reach the men in time. The Bangkok Post reports that divers later retrieved the men's bodies. Now, it's a sad fact that South Korea is suffering from rising fine dust concentrations each and every winter, it seems. In a bid to stop the air quality getting even worse, various measures involving new technologies are being rolled out to hopefully help us breathe a little easier in years to come. Jo Sung-min tells us more.
One of the most basic ways of cleaning up the air is to cut down on pollution from construction sites. To make sure builders are doing that, South Korea has introduced some new surveillance technologies. For example, the city of Seoul has a drone equipped with a camera that can capture a crystal clear view of a construction site from 100 meters up in the air. It allows the city to easily see whether workers are taking the proper steps to reduce pollution or not.
There are more than 200 construction sites just in Seoul-Tokyo district, and about 50 of them are huge. With the drones in the air, we're planning to cut pollution as much as possible.
Other construction sites have new sensors that can measure the level of fine dust. If it reaches a certain concentration, then the sensor alerts the authorities, who can then do things to get the dust under control. In addition to pollution from builders, experts say another major cause of urban pollution is cars when they idle. That's why these thermal imaging cameras were developed. The authorities can use the cameras as they move from city to city to find vehicles that are idling too long. South Korea has a growing problem with ultrafine dust pollution, but the country is trying to solve the problem using high-tech gadgets, and this is just the beginning. 조성민, Arirang News.
Good morning. It's time to brace for a blast of very cold air. Hopefully, the bone-chilling temperatures will not ruin your festive mood. Icy temperatures will blow in this afternoon and stay with us for a while, so it's going to be freezing for the remainder of 2018. And despite colder temperatures than yesterday, some regions have poor air quality, but the icy winds should bring in cleaner air, while dry weather alerts are in place for the capital area and the eastern part of the country. So be sure to drink plenty of water to stay safe from the dusty and dry conditions. The piercing cold wave is sweeping across Beijing as well. Tomorrow can be a real cold one, but Tokyo is enjoying mild temperatures. Back here in Korea, daily highs will be similar or a tad lower than yesterday, getting up to 1 degree Celsius here in the capital and 7 degrees in Daegu and Gwangju this afternoon. And we will kick off the new year with stinging cold temperatures, and we'll have to wait until the middle of next week to see daily highs rebound into positive territory. So be sure to dress extra warm and cover up if you plan on doing any outdoor activities. That's Korea for you, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
And that's pretty much all we have for now. If it's still Christmas Day in your part of the world, on behalf of everyone here at Arirang, we hope you spent it with your loved ones, if not your friends. Do stay tuned to us here, though, on Arirang TV, because we'll have our next newscast coming up at noon Korea time with our very own Lee Ji-yoon. So until then, goodbye.